Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Earrings Off. We want to invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. You can find us on Facebook at Earrings Off Podcast and on Instagram at The Earrings Off Podcast.
Welcome to Earrings Off. I'm Lou.
And I'm Teresa. Let's get started.
Today we have with us Mark Herschberg. Mark is the author of the Career Toolkit, Essential Skills for Success That No One Taught You. Educated at MIT, Mark has spent his career launching and fixing new ventures at startups, Fortune 500s, and academia. He's developed new software languages, online marketplaces, new authentication systems, and tracked criminals and terrorists on the dark web. Mark helped create the Undergraduate Practice Opportunities Program, MIT's Career Success Accelerator, where he's taught for 20 years. Mark also serves on the boards of nonprofits Techie Youth and Plant a Million Corals. We are so excited to have you here with us today. Mark, welcome to Earrings Off.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's my pleasure to be here.
Very good. We're going to jump right in. Why don't you tell us what inspired you to write the Career Toolkit, Essential Skills for Success No One Taught You?
Early in my career, I began as a software developer, and I wanted to become the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, the person in charge of all the engineers. I realized that to get that job, it wasn't just about being the best software engineer. I also needed other skills, leadership, communication, team building, negotiating, but no one ever taught me these skills. So I had to develop them in myself. And in doing so, I realized these aren't just for executives, they are for everyone on the team. I began to train up my team. Now, as I was doing this, MIT had been surveying the companies who hire our students, and they gave similar feedback. They said, we want to see these very same skills, leadership, team building, communication, in the people we hire. Not just the students we hire from MIT, not just students in general, but everyone. And we can't find these skills either. So at MIT, they decided to create a program to help teach this. When I heard about it, I reached out. I said, I've been teaching these skills to my team. Anything I can do to help, I'm happy to share resources. So MIT asked me to help create the program, the one you mentioned, the Career Success Accelerator. I helped to design it, and then they asked me to teach it, which I've been doing now for over 20 years. Over the years, I encouraged MIT to really expand this program. We know it's not just for MIT students, it's not just for engineers, it's for everyone. And yet we haven't really had the time or resources to do so. So I thought, I'm going to write up some notes for the class. It's a very hands-on class, very interactive. It's not us lecturing, so we're not taking a lot of notes. I thought, let me write up some notes for the students, and then maybe I can share it online to get it to more people. What I thought was 20 pages of notes quickly became 40, then 80. And once it passed 100, I realized this is not just a couple pages of notes. This is a book and, of course, the corresponding app. And so that's how the book came to be.
Okay. So, Mark, can you share some highlights for us from the book, please?
The book is broken down into 3 sections, 10 chapters. And these are the 10 skills that we have seen in surveys at MIT and elsewhere, which are the skills that companies are asking for. Section 1 is on careers, how to create and execute a career plan, how to work effectively, things like managing your manager or understanding corporate culture, and then interviewing, both from the candidate side, but also from the hiring manager side, because so many of us hire people, and yet no one's trained us how to do that, how to effectively interview. The second section, leadership and management, and I break it down into the individual components, a chapter on leadership, and then a chapter on the people side of management and the process side of management. The third section, interpersonal dynamics, has 4 chapters, communication, networking, negotiating, and ethics. And those are the 10 skills that companies have repeatedly said they want to see. These are timeless skills that aren't going to change every few years, but will serve you throughout your career.
Yeah. Well, the piece about making sure you have skills to hire, That's very important. When I used to work with managers, you know, a bad hire can derail the whole team. You spend so much time trying to refocus and redirect and provide support to people who just maybe aren't a good fit. And so that's critical that we get the necessary skills to hire. And the challenge is, even if you're in a big organization and you have a fully staffed HR department, they aren't the ones in your team that are running your division. So try as they might, they may not truly understand where the gaps are or what you're trying to hire for. So I find that piece very essential, that you have the skills that you need to make a good hire. So,
And if you think about your teenage children. When
mhm.
they turn 16, do you say to them, when they turn 16, do you say to them, okay, great, you're old enough to drive. So you've seen me drive before. You know what the steering wheel does. You've watched. So here you go. Here are the car
Yeah,
keys.
yeah,
Best of luck to you. Try not to hit anyone.
right.
No, we say, look, I know you get this conceptually, but you still have to learn and practice. And then you only get a provisional driver's license. You have to have someone experienced watch with you.
Right, right.
Yet when we bring people into our companies, and we always say, well, people are our most important asset. So welcome to the company. Hey, you've seen interviews before, right? So here
Yeah.
you go. Here are the keys. Try not to
Right,
hire the wrong person.
right.
We put zero training into hiring. And yet, as you point out, it is so critical in our
It is.
organization
Yeah.
because of the people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, hmm
Good stuff. So, you don't know me, but I am big into health, right? So when I saw this next quote about the career plan, I thought, wow, that's a nice analogy that I get. The multivitamin for your career, right? So tell us about that. Why is it important to have a career plan?
It's called a multivitamin, just to address that for a moment, because it covers so many different topics. You can buy a book on leadership. You can buy a book
hmm
on communicating. You can buy a book on individual topics, but this puts them all together. And like a multivitamin, we take those because the different elements really come together and support each other. If you just have one without the other, you're not getting everything you need, and you might not even absorb it as well. The same
hmm
is true with these skills. Not only do you need them all, but they interact, they build upon each other. Now, you hit upon one of the underlying elements why you need a career plan. Imagine you're at work and the CEO walks over to your desk and says, I've got an incredibly important project. This is going to make or break the company in the next 2 years, and I'm putting you in charge. You've
hmm
got to make sure this happens. We need to be successful. Now you say to them, okay, I understand. So I'm just going to go off and work on it. I'll call you in 2 years. Fingers crossed we make it. No project plan, no budget, no schedule. Don't worry. Fingers crossed. We'll try really hard. That's insanity. No CEO would
Yeah,
accept that. And yet, when it comes
right.
to our careers, which are much more than 2 years, what do? We
hmm
say, well, I hope to be here in 10 years. No project plan, no schedule. Fingers crossed. I hope I get there. That is not acceptable for our companies. It shouldn't be acceptable for us. So, just like any project we work on, we want to create a plan. Now, also, like any plan we have at our companies, we know it's never going to go according to plan.
hmm
We know we're going to have to change and adjust along the way. We also know it's easier to define what we're doing in the near term further out in that 2 year plan, day 637. I don't know what exactly
hmm
I'm doing. I
hmm
have some idea where I'm going to be while I'm working. I can't tell you specifically. So it's more detailed up front, fuzzier further out, and then I just readjust and refine as I go. So
hmm
this is how we need to
Nice.
think about our careers.
hmm But so, Mark, then can you share with us what are some of the general, what do you see as some typical resistance to people developing a career path? If you say, you know what, you need to develop a path, we know a career plan, we know how important it is. What do people typically say is a barrier to them doing that? Is it just that, like for me, it would be the very thought is overwhelming to try and figure out the different pieces of that. So what do you typically hear from people when you talk to them about you need to develop a career plan?
Great question. There are a number of areas that trip people up. The
Mm-hmm.
first is, wow, it does seem overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And so it begins by asking a series of questions. I have these in chapter 1. They're also available for free on the resources page on my website that I'm sure we'll give later on in the
Okay.
show. And you start by asking these questions. Ask them of yourself. Talk to other people to get ideas. You need to refine your thoughts. Just like if you were doing some project at work, you start by saying, well, what's the goal? We better define the goal before we create a plan to get there.
Right.
And so asking these questions is going to help you figure out the goal. Second, recognize that your goal can change. We've all been on projects at work where 6 months in, your boss says, hey, change of plans. We need to adjust where we're going. Certainly over the next 5, 10, 20 years, your plans will change. And that's fine. This is your career. You own it. You can change it. People get petrified because they think, well, once I set the plan, I'm stuck.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can change your plans anytime. You own this. There's no one else to
Right.
answer to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then they get worried about how am I going to know what to do in 7 years? And that's where we get, again, focus on the near term and just put placeholders further out.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally adjust as you go. Just like on a regular project, if we have that 2-year plan at work, we don't say, well, here's the plan. We'll check in year 2.
Mm-hmm.
We say, all right, let's do check-ins each month. How are we doing? Are we on track? Are we off track? Do we need to change things? We're going to do that with our plan. So a simple thing you can do to start right now, put a note in your calendar. You can pause this podcast, put a calendar note that says, think about my career, put a 30-minute calendar reminder and set that to recur every 6 months. That's it. 30 minutes every 6 months.
That's good,
You can
actually.
start with those
Yeah.
questions,
Mm-hmm.
or you can do some of the other exercises we talk about in the book.
Mm-hmm. Because this allows you to break it down so that it's not so overwhelming, but it also requires that you be disciplined to go back and not just say, I'm not even going to think about it. You have a set time that you're going to devote to this task. So that's good. So Mark, how do you access a corporate culture? Talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, the corporate culture can be tricky. And we want to make sure we have the right fit. It's not just about, are they paying me? Am I doing the right job? But do I fit into the culture? You can do this a couple different ways. Some is observation. Look at what they're doing. Look at what their posts are, for example, on social media. You can see how are people dressed in those posts. See how are people interacting. You could read the values on the website, although that I'm less excited about. Usually that's set by some committee and it doesn't always reflect the reality.
Right.
But you can, in fact, ask people during the interview process about the corporate culture. In fact, many of the questions they ask you, you can ask them. So there are these standard interview questions. Tell me about your weaknesses. We've all heard that one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can turn around and ask at the end of the interview, tell me, what are some of the worst aspects of working at this company?
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to ask that to you, you can ask that of them. Now, here's the thing. People are uncomfortable asking questions about corporate culture. And there's a list of them that I have in one of my blog posts that you can go and read. When you want to do this, if you don't feel comfortable, blame me. You can say, I was listening to this amazing podcast episode and the guest had a great set of questions. And he said, these are good questions for us to discuss because it helps both of us, the company and me, the candidate, make sure this is a mutual fit. So I'd like to go through a few of those questions. So you can put the responsibility on me as your motivation for asking.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's some good stuff. How can someone learn to be a better interviewer?
One of the best things that you can do as an interviewer is to first be clear about what you are trying to achieve. Again, we have that analogy of people just, you toss them the keys and go, okay, I guess I'm driving. I'm just going to wander around. But of course, when we drive, we want to have a clear destination. So understand when you are being an interviewer, what are you looking for? There is a job description, but it's usually not sufficient. Unfortunately, people write terrible job descriptions. You know you need to look for a certain set of experience and knowledge, and you want to have questions explicitly designed to understand that, to assess the capability of the candidate, but then also think about other things. Are there certain other traits? Do you have a very close-knit team where everyone gets along, everyone hangs out outside of work? Well, then maybe it's important that the next person who joins is going to fit into that group and is the type of person who says, I want friendships with my coworkers. Someone who just says, nope, 5 o'clock, I walk out the door, might not fit into that team. Make sure you assess that. Are you a team where everyone jokes around a lot? Okay, you want to make sure this person also likes to joke around, but you need to intentionally assess that. So define what you're looking for. Start with that job description, but there's probably more to it. And then be very intentional in your questions to make sure you've covered each of those aspects that you're looking for.
Very good. What advice do you have for the interviewee?
One of the best things you can do as an interviewee is to be an interviewer. Consider if someone said, hey, you are going to have to give a speech. All right, I want to get better at this. So first thing you do is you practice. You practice your speech. And by the way, you can practice as an interviewee, just like you practice public speaking. You might not be doing a 60-minute talk, but you know the questions. It's going to be, what are your weaknesses? Why are you leaving your last job? These questions are not a surprise. You can practice your answers ahead of time. And just like a speech, not word for word, but you know what you're going to say.
Absolutely.
But then what do better public speakers do? We watch each other. We watch other people. We watch other great public speakers and say, oh, I like how she uses the stage. I like how he varies his tone. We look for techniques we can take from others. When you become an interviewer and you watch candidates, you can start to see what are best practices, what are worst practices, and start to adopt some of those and incorporate them into your own interview style.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that.
So Mark, talk to us a bit about how can people build their network. That's an issue that has been an issue for me in the past. I'm a bit of an introvert, not really that person that's all out and about. So give us some tips about building your network.
Now, I'm a bit of an introvert as well. And we have this stereotype about what networking is. There's lots of tips we can go through, and I have them in the book, but let's talk about changing your mindset, because this is the first step in being a great networker. We think a great networker is someone, he walks into that conference room in 30 minutes, he comes out, he's got 20 business cards.
Yeah, right.
Introvert, yeah. Oh, how does he do that? That's weird.
Right?
That is not networking.
Okay.
That is collecting business cards.
Okay.
In fact, networking, all these people, oh, I have all these business cards. I have all these people on LinkedIn. They're all connecting me. Look at how networked I am. Saying someone who you're connected to on LinkedIn is in your network, that's like saying, hey, I just swiped right on this girl on Tinder. She swiped back. We're practically married. Right? Swipe right. That's it in a relationship.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a relationship. That's the start. Now I have to build that relationship. Going on dates.
Right.
So when you get that business card, that's step one. Now you have to build that relationship.
Okay.
And that's what networking is. It is relationship building. If you've ever had a friend, and I'm sure you have, you know how to build a relationship. And so whether you get 20 business cards at once, or whether you meet someone one-on-one and start to build that relationship, that is really how you're going to network. It is individual one-on-one relationship building, regardless of how you met them. So it's okay if you're not comfortable being in that conference room and meeting lots at once, but whether you meet them all at once or one at a time, the relationship building happens one-on-one. And that's something we all know how to do.
That's very good, because the very thought, when you talk about going into a conference room and you see people who very easily navigate in that environment, but it's larger than that. It's actually following up and making sure that you're establishing some type of relationship with people. So, okay. All right. That's helpful.
Nice. So in the book, you claim that someone can make $30,000 with your advice. Now, that's a pretty bold claim. How can they do this?
Let's imagine you have my book, you've read the negotiation chapter. And by the way, my book is designed so you can jump from one chapter to another. You don't have to read it in order. So you buy my book, and the first 30, 40 minutes, all you did is you read that chapter. You can skip the rest of the book. You just read that chapter. Now you have a job offer, and the job offer is for, let's say, $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
You're 30 years old, $60,000 job offer. Instead of just accepting that job, you use some of the advice in the book. You follow the techniques and you negotiate for $1,000 more.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds pretty doable. That's not a huge jump.
Right.
You've negotiated 60 to 61,000. It took you 5-10 minutes to negotiate that. If you do nothing else in your life, if you sit in this job for the next 30 years, you've just made $1,000 more for 30 years. An hour of reading at most, 5-10 minutes of negotiating, you just earned yourself $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm sure people are saying, wait a second, there's no way I'm staying in a job for 30 years.
Yeah.
And you're right. You're not. You're going to have other jobs and promotions and raises. And if you learn how to negotiate, and you're going to get more than just $1,000 in some of those cases, you can add tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars to your lifetime earning. Mm-hmm. And when you think about this, my God, why have I not learned to negotiate? I need to do it right now. You can read my book. You can read other books on negotiating. You can take an online class, but whatever you do, learn to negotiate. And now here's a really big secret. We can do the math with negotiations. Okay, see how the money adds up. Wow, that's great. The same is true for being a better leader, communicator, networker, any of these other skills. Now, no one is going to say, hey, you're a better networker. Okay, I'll give you 61 instead of 60. Mm-hmm. But by being a better networker, you're going to get that job opportunity that pays a little more than the one that you're at. Mm-hmm. You're going to get another client, another partner. You're going to get more opportunities down the road, or you're going to be seen as a better leader and get promoted faster. So all of these skills have the same return. It's just not as easy to do the math, except with negotiations.
Well, Mark, we talked earlier about the demographics of our audience, and many times research has shown that women, we are sometimes the worst at negotiation because we don't want to be seen as greedy or aggressive. And so even people, right, all of that. And then you even have people that are, they're working or they're fearful that if I negotiate, they're going to pull back that job offer. So how do you, what can you share about that in terms of, understanding that this is part of the process, negotiation, or minimizing those concerns a bit?
Great question. So this is a very big, deep topic. Let me hit on a couple key parts of it. The research has been mixed. There are some studies that show women and men are not any different in how they negotiate. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's a big Australian study that showed that they're equal. That said, I think some of it is cultural. Mm-hmm. One of my theories is it's because of our heteronormative culture here in the United States. Mm-hmm. As men, since we are teenagers, what were we trained to do? Walk up to women and say, hi, I'd like to get your phone number. I'd like to ask you out. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, you're going to say no. That's what we face as men. Rejection, rejection, rejection. Men are taught to take that risk,
right?
Be rejected and keep going.
Right.
And we even see those cases of the, not to just put people in a really simple dynamic. I don't think this evaluates people will illustrate. We see the guy who might be a 4 going after the woman who's a 10. Yeah. She is so out of his league. I can't believe he's going up and doing that, but that's what we've been trained to do as men. We've been trained to do that reach.
Right.
And so one of the things we see is that women haven't been trained to do that reach as well, to go as high as they really should. So when negotiating, one of the best pieces of advice I got was from a Wharton professor, Richard Shell. And in his book, he says, when you do your ask, you should give the biggest number you can give with the straight face. So if there's a job that maybe it's going for, let's say, $100,000, and they ask me, hey, what are you looking for? I can't say $1 million.
Right.
There's no way any of us can take that seriously.
Right.
Could I ask for 140,000? Hey, that's a big stretch, but maybe if I am the perfect candidate, I have everything lined up. Maybe. I don't expect them to do it, but I'm going to do that stretch. So you need to get the mindset of, I'm going to do the biggest I can do. Imagine everything works out perfectly. That's the number I want, not that I expect to get. Now, here's the other key thing. People are afraid to do it because they think I will offend you.
Right.
Oh, if I ask for a number, I'm going to offend you. Any good manager should be open to this. A good manager shouldn't say, do what I say, and if you dare challenge me, you're fired.
Right.
Good manager. In fact, one of the things I look for when I hire is someone who will challenge me. It's like, wait, Mark, I think you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So a good manager can take some pushback as long as it's respectful, can take a different opinion, if done respectfully. So if, for example, you offer me 100,000, I go, screw you, I want 140. Okay, it's not a great way to do it.
Right.
And there I have to say, well, thank you for your offer. I am very excited to work for your company. I was looking at the number 140,000 because I have all this great experience. If you look what I did the last 5 years, it is totally on point to what you're doing. And there's not many people who can do that. So I really think that justifies 140,000 for this job. And I hope we can make this work out.
Okay.
And then someone's going to come back with something else. You're going to go back and forth, but you're not pounding each other. You're saying, let's find a way to make this work.
Right.
In a respectful way.
So so be respectful, but also to have done your research and provide a justification for that increase. So yeah.
This is key for any type of negotiation you do, not just salary negotiations. You never just give a position.
Right.
You give the motivation behind it.
Yeah.
Because what we want to do is we want to look at where we can find alignment in our motivations, not just positions, because it's easier to find positions within overlapping motivations.
Okay. That is good. Good information.
Earlier in the opening, you mentioned along with the book, you created an app. So can you tell us a little bit about the app and how it relates to the book?
How many times have you read a book and you said, oh, there's really great information here, but then 3 weeks later, you forget 99% of it. You read another book, you're busy at work, driving the kids around, things happen, and you really liked what you read, but you can't remember it all. My job as an author isn't simply to get you to buy dead trees. My job is to change the way you think and behave. Now, the book is one way to do that. That's how I convey information to you, but I want you to retain that. There is a well-proven technique called spaced repetition. We're all familiar with this. Flashcards are the most common version. Let's look at it again and again. Now, I know people aren't going to make flashcards for a book. People don't even want to open tools and apps on their phone. So I create a very special type of app. It's free from the Android and iPhone stores, and it's linked from my website, so you can go to the store to download it. When you download the app, you just need to open it once a month, just so we know that you're active, that we're not bothering you. And then each day at a time you set, it's going to pop up one of the key takeaways from the book. And to get that notification, you look at it, you go, okay, that's great. Swipe it away. Takes you 2-3 seconds a day, but it's going to help keep that content top of mind. You can even set it to one particular category. So if you go and buy the book and say, I'm just going to read that negotiation chapter and focus just on that, set to just have negotiation tips coming up for a while and focus on that area. The other way you can use the book is if you're about to go into that salary negotiation. Oh, I got the offer, but I want a counter. And there were some great techniques in Mark's book, but I don't have time to reread it. Before you do that call to negotiate, open up the app and then go to those tips and flip through them and get that refresher right before you go into the interview, the negotiation, the networking event, whatever it is you're doing. So the app is there to help you
Nice.
better retain and have access to the
Mhm.
content in the book.
Well, Mark, that is great information. Very, very helpful, very clear cut. I like the way that you have provided specific steps. It doesn't make it so, so difficult to understand that it's sort of just out there like you say, well, I'll go back to that at some point. You have concrete information that people can follow and work to help with their careers. So thank you for that. Do you have any parting thoughts that you can share with the audience about your book or anything else you want to share with us as we get ready to end?
One thing to consider is the way we need to learn these skills is different how we have typically learned in the past. If you are learning, let's say, a new software language in my field, what
Mhm.
do? You read the book, you memorize, here's the way the language works, here's how you set it up. It's just knowledge transfer. Here's what I do in this language versus that language. And I know exactly when and where to apply it. When I'm writing the code, that's where I use that knowledge. Unfortunately, the way we learn and apply the skills I talked about in the book aren't so cut and dry. There is no simple thing to memorize to be a leader. There's no formula for networking, no 3 steps to always communicate. It's also not always clear where you use it. No one says, hey, listen, at 3:17 p.m. on Wednesday, I
Mhm.
need you to lead for
Mhm.
5 minutes, then you can stop.
Mhm.
These are continuous skills. They are more akin to, let's say, learning a sport. We don't tell people, oh, the way to learn a sport is you're going to go read a book. Obviously, that's not a great way to learn a sport,
Mhm.
or even do a 1-day workshop for that sport, and now you're done. Anyone who's ever done any sports, we know you have to continue to drill and practice and train. And that's true for these skills as well. So the best way to learn these skills, the way we can replicate that, because practicing leadership isn't easy. You can't say to your
Mhm.
team,
Mhm.
hey, listen, I'm going to practice leading this new thing I'm going to try for the next afternoon. And then if you screw it up, you go, okay, everyone, do over, take that back, doesn't count. That's
Mhm.
not what we can do in the office.
Right.
So the way you want to do this is to create some peer learning groups. Get other people, ideally colleagues at work. But if your workplace doesn't want to support this, if HR says, no, we don't want to do that, go get your friends, go get your colleagues. If you're doing this with your kids, have your kids find their peers to learn these skills together. And then as you read a chapter of the book, you want to discuss it. You want to go in and debrief and talk about, hey, what did you get out of it? I was thinking this. Oh, you were thinking of it that way. Okay, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of it that way. Hey, has anyone actually tried doing this? Oh, you tried it
Mhm.
a couple of years ago. How'd that
Mhm.
work? What worked?
Right.
What didn't? So you want to have these discussions. Now, I have on the resources page of my website a way to set these up and to do it. And yes, you can use my book for it. If you don't want to use my book, no problem. Use a different book. Use your favorite leadership book, your favorite networking book, whatever you want to do. You can also use articles online. You can use a great podcast like this one. Listen to the episode
Thank
and
you.
then discuss it with
Mhm.
your friends. But the key is for these skills, there's no simple thing to memorize. You have to have that discussion to really learn and understand and deepen your knowledge.
Mhm. Okay. And so, Mark, what's your website again, please?
My website is thecareertoolkitbook.com. And
Mhm.
there you can see where to buy the book, Amazon and other standard places. You
Mhm.
can get in touch with me or follow me on social media. You can go to the app page, and that's going to take you to the Android and iPhone stores to download the free app. The resources page has that tool for creating these peer learning groups, as well as links to other free online resources. There's also a blog and a bunch of other great resources on the website. All of this at thecareertoolkitbook.com.
Okay. Thank you so very much for being with us today, Mark. A lot of excellent information, and thank you for even caring enough to share through your book and with our audience today.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I love helping people with their professional efficacy.
Well, much needed.